Thanks, Swami.
Hello, Anna. Welcome. Olga and Narayani slipped in there, and Steven slipped in there. Rajani is here. All right, we're continuing on with the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We're on the chapter Visit to the Sinti Brahma Massage, Samaj, massage. We're going to go watch Ramakrishna get a massage today. And in this era, in this where we stopped last week, Ramakrishna was talking about advice to worldly minded people. Like how do worldly minded people get cured? Which instantly made me very interested, right? And oh yeah, how do we fix that? That's a good idea. And so I'll just start with the last paragraph where we started because he comes up, he continues with it. So we'll start. The master says, or a sub-judge has asked him, Sir, do we have to renounce the world? Remember that question? And the surprising thing is Ramakrishna's answer, because the judge says, Sir, must we renounce the world? Master, no. Why should you? Right? As if he's never said renounce the world. No, why should you? A man can realize God even in the world, right? And that's a testament right there. I mean, that's a statement that God can be realized even by a worldly minded person. Why? Because God is true. God is truth, and truth can't have a conditional realization. It should always be self-evident at some point. If you're looking at it, if you're looking for it, you're always going to find something that becomes self-evident. And so God, or the divine realization, divine reality, is inevitable for all of us because it is the truth of isness. It's the truth of being. It's what is. And so it doesn't it's not about conditions and circumstances. It's about an inner knowledge that you've been carrying with you within yourself forever. And as soon as you become adept at the subtleties of your inner self, they become obvious. It becomes apparent to you. So, no, why should you? A man can realize God even in the world, but at the beginning, he must spend a few days in solitude. Remember, we talked about that. So, you need to every now and then, with some regularity, as a householder, which sort of puts us in the category of worldly people. Because worldly people is not a judgment thing. It's a statement about the condition of our mind. Worldly means that our mind is still running outside of ourself for our purpose, for our enjoyment, for our meaning, for our fulfillment. And as long as we're asking ourselves, oh, what do you want to do? What do you feel like doing? Well, then you're a worldly person. You're right, because that's how we spend our time. That's how we traverse this life is through enjoyments, through experiences, through collecting those things. Right? So, a man should spend a few days in solitude. He must practice spiritual discipline in a solitary place. He should take a room near his house so that he may come home only for his meals. Keshap and Pratap and others said to me, Sir, we follow the ideal of King Janaka. Mere words don't make a King Janaka, I replied. How many austerities King Janaka first had to perform in solitude, standing on his head and so on. Do something first, then you may become a King Janaka. You see a man writing English fluently, but could he do that at the start? Perhaps he was the son of poor parents. Perhaps he was a cook in a family and earned his meals by his service. Perhaps he had to struggle very hard to go on with his studies. It is after all these efforts that he can now write fluent English, right? So what Ramakrishna is doing there is he's warning us about these intentions. The intent, for us, there's a famous one of those things that gets preached from the pulpit in Christian churches all the time. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. All right. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And that's the thing is that we often, that's the way the ego works. The ego is always trying to collect trinkets to assure us that we're safe and okay, that we're enough of ourselves, right? And so the ego will start to, you watch a YouTube video and you'll feel sentimental and you'll smile and you'll think, oh, I'm a nice person. I still cry at YouTube videos. Right. And so you tuck this false idea of yourself up there that you're compassionate and caring because you cried at a YouTube video, or all these little different things, or we feel compassion for somebody. We don't do anything, but we feel some compassion for somebody. And the ego goes and quickly picks that flower and says, yes, and puts it in its ear. Yes, I'm a compassionate person. Let me put that compassion flower right here. And so it's always gathering these ideas and about ourselves, and that's a sign of worldliness, where we keep looking for attributes, conditions, and circumstances that enhance our sense of ourself, right? And that's what the ego does. It just spends all of its time doing that. Actually, it does it out of every circumstance, and because it's trying to make you self-reliant in that sense, reliant on your own doership, on your own knowing, your own intelligence, and whatnot like that. Right? So he's saying, don't say, oh, I'm a householder, I'm going to be like King Jonica. It's like fine. It's not that you want to be like King Jonica that's the problem. It's that you're just saying it. And you're not doing any of the austerity that King Jonica did. You're not spending any of the time in practice, the severe amounts of time in practice and study that Jonica did. And so that's really all he's saying. He's like, yes, aspire to that, but don't be content with aspiring to it. Do it. Discipline yourself. Do the work that Jonica did, and then say that you want to be a Jonica. Don't live a householder life and say, "Oh, I'm like King Jonica." So that's really where he's going with that. I said to Keshub Sen further, how can the worldly man be cured of his serious disease unless he goes into solitude? A worldly man is suffering from a delirious fever, as it were. Suppose there are pickled tamarind and jars of water in the room of such a patient. Now, how can you expect him to get rid of the disease? Just see, the very mention of pickled tamarind is making my mouth water. Everyone laughs. You can very well imagine what will happen if the tamarind is actually put in front of me. To a man, a woman is the pickled tamarind. And his desire for enjoyment are the jars of water. There is neither end nor limit to this desire for worldly enjoyment, right? That's a very important sentence right there, also, by the way. you know, there is neither end nor limit to the desire for worldly enjoyment. Right, because I've really seen that in my years as a spiritual seeker. At first, I thought God was just trying to take away all my favorite things so that I would keep my mind on Him, right, and do things His way. And that always kind of put me at odds with God because I was like, how come where you always get your way and I never get my way? And what kind of friends are we going to be, you know, if that's the case? And it's true. It's true. If you think of it like that, you can't really fall in love with a God that insists on his way all the time. So you have to really wrestle with it, right? And that's what it means to put yourself in relationship, your ego in relationship to God, either as his servant or as his lover or as his friend. It's through that relationship that these other things get fixed, right? Where we come to realize, wow, the beauty of God is constantly available to me, right? Constantly present in me. And so you find that out when you spend that time in silence, when you get away from all of the things that are constantly keeping you uh, in a state of enjoyment, right? It's that's one of the great things in the monastery. In a monastery, there's pictures of holy people everywhere, right? In my old apartment, there was one in my room. That's the only place I had a holy picture. The rest of it were these nice paintings and whatnot, just pretty things, right? And in the monastery, there's always shelves of spiritual books and always plenty of comfortable chairs to sit down and read them in, right? In my home, it wasn't. And so this is why we do this. Once you start feeding enjoyment to yourself, your mind is always looking for it. And anytime you put yourself into the conditions where you enjoy yourself, the mind is prompted toward it. Right. And so that's why when we come up with a place to practice, to meditate in our house, we pick a place, then we don't use it for anything else. And the reason is that's how we control the mind. That's how we inspire the mind. If you sit down in a chair for any other reason than for doing your meditation, then you're going to be thinking about all those other reasons that you sit down in the chair. But if you only sit in that chair for meditation, I can guarantee you when you sit in it, you will think of meditation. And so this is what we're doing. We're trying to train the body mind by the way that we use our body and the way that we use our minds. And also by making our life demonstrate that this is the one most important thing to us. I think that's the most disturbing practice to me, is to sit at the end of the day and take an account of my day. I like to ask myself the question, if someone else watched my day on TV, if they watched a recording of my entire day, and then at the end of it wrote down what was important to me, what would they see in that day? Would, if they had followed me around, would they have been able to determine without my saying anything, just by the way that I live my life, because they wouldn't have access to my thoughts or anything, just by the way I live my life, is it obvious that love is the one most important thing in my life, right? That the service of humanity was the one most important thing in my life, and that my realization was the one most important thing in my life? Is that what they would find? And I'm always very uncomfortable with that thought because it would be very hard for me to imagine that they could find that in my day, you know, and it's challenging. And that's why we think that way. That's why Thakur is bringing it up, because it's easy to fall into delusion. I'm fine. Especially in this world, nobody else is looking for God. So compared to everybody else, I'm doing amazing. All right. It's like even the mind will even trick you into saying, "Gosh, even amongst my holy company, I'm doing pretty great," right? But in fact, your life looks like everybody else's, right? That's the hunger for the day. Where are the spiritual people whose lives are obviously spiritual? Where are the religious people who don't live like everybody else lives, right? Who are actually loving, who are actually serving, who are actually kind, who are actually compassionate? Where are we, right? This is our divine potential. When Thakur tells us you have potentially divine, that's what he's saying. You can change the world. You're just what I need to change the world. So this pickled tamarind, you can't live in the middle of all the things that you enjoy because they'll distract your mind. They'll pull you there. So this is why every now and then go someplace where none of your samskaras can reach you. Leave your phone, leave your computer, right? You can all well imagine what would happen if a tamarind was actually put in front of me. To a man, a woman is a pickled tamarind, and his desire for enjoyment is the jars of water. There is neither end nor limit to this desire for worldly enjoyment. And this is why, this is why that the scriptures forbid these things. It's not because they're wicked in and of themselves. It's because they do not give you what they promise, but they continue to promise. And you can take your life all the way down with them, not getting anything, but becoming more and more desperate the whole time, more and more intense about your search, right? So this is an important thing to know right away. There is neither end nor limit to this desire for worldly enjoyment. So you're never going to have enough. You're never going to be satisfied. And you're never going to get the level of enjoyment that you were promised by your memory, by your thought about it. Know that going into it. That's what discernment is. That's what discrimination is. To sit there and look and say, look, You have been enjoying this thing for darn near 60 years, and you still have not gotten any satisfaction from it. You are still being drawn into it over and over and over again. Stop it. That's where the renunciation comes. When you've already done the discernment, when you can see the absurdity, but you're still falling into patterns, that's when it's time for renunciation. And that's when it's time, that one grand renunciation that Ramakrishna talks about, where you finally enough. I'm done, right? And you are. There is neither end nor limit to this desire for worldly enjoyment, and the things are in the patient's very room. Can you expect the patient to get rid of the delirious fever in this fashion? He must be removed for a few days to another place where there are neither pickled tamarind nor water jars. Then he will be cured. After that, if he returns to his old room, he will have nothing to fear. Lust and greed cannot do any harm to the person who lives in the world after attaining God, right? And after attaining God means that you have begun to rely on God for your satisfaction, for your courage, for your being, for your contentment, where God really does become enough, where like you have a few minutes, you sit down and you just relax in a chair and your mantra automatically starts in the mind, and that's enough. Nothing else is necessary. You know, you wake up for in the morning and there's not a single plan for your day. So you just get up and start, and that's enough for you. You don't worry. You don't go and try and fill up time. You don't try and go and make plans just for the sake of making plans, just for the sake of being busy, right? When you are confident that you're doing the right things out of love for God, then it's time, then you can live in the world, right? When your discernment has paid up and you've understood that the world can give you nothing, and you've done the work of taking refuge in God alone through your discernment and your constant practice on that, then it's okay to hang out in the world because the world won't be able to promise you anything. You know that there's nothing there, and you know that there is something in the direction of the beloved within. And so your mind is drawn to itself finally, drawn to the inner world. Right? It says, then we will be cured. But we must be careful at the beginning. We must practice spiritual discipline in strict solitude. The peepal tree, when it's young, is fenced around to protect it from cattle. But there is no need for the fence when the trunk grows thick and strong. Then no harm will be done to the tree, even if an elephant is tied to it. Woman in gold will not be able to harm you in the least if you go and lead a householder's life after increasing your spiritual strength and developing love for the lotus feet of God through the practice of spiritual discipline in solitude. Right? So the world will not be your trouble anymore. That's our ideal. A lot of times in religion, we sort of have these immature ideals where we think that, that dispassion is the ideal. No, dispassion's not the ideal. How can you love somebody or show somebody that you love them if you're being dispassionate about them? Right? Vivekananda makes very clear. It's the balance between passion and dispassion that is the ideal. That you have an equal amount of passion to your dispassion, an equal amount of dispassion to your passion, so that you can pick things up and inform it of your deep love and compassion for it. And when it's time, you can set it down and not have another thought about it. That's the ideal, right? So we don't want immature ideals, ideals that aren't true in that. A man sets milk in a quiet place to curdle, and then he extracts butter from that curd. Yeah. After once extracting the butter of devotion and knowledge from the milk of the mind, if you keep that transformed mind in the water of the world, it will float and the world in the world unattached. But if that mind in its unripe state, that is to say, when it is just like liquid milk, it's kept in the water of the world, then the milk and the water will get mixed. In that case, it will be impossible for the mind to float unattached in the world. He's talking here in a way that actually is extremely important, and he's not telling the whole story because he uses this and he teaches this instruction in detail earlier on. But this whole idea of the ripe coconut, the ripe ego, it's a very important function. And basically what it is you have to go in and do the inner work in your inner world so that you can see the different components of self in there. You have to come to a place of familiarity where you instantly recognize the mind and its effect on you and its means of communicating with you and its tricks for getting your attention and the way that it wakes up a samskara and the way that it presents a samskara and the way that it accesses a memory and how it uses the senses to access memory and to pull out particular memories and how that happens and how one memory brings up a second memory and how two memories can create a narrative. You have to watch all of these things and become intimately aware of them within. This is what he's talking about here, where milk that's been turned into curd or to butter, right? It's no longer just a formless wet. It's not just the inner world. The inner world has components, and it's when you pay attention, it churns into butter. Okay, there's the mind. Okay, there's the curd. Oh, that's the body. Then there's me, the self, and you have to sit there and pay enough attention and be still enough in there to recognize being there and to recognize this inner world around you so that you can see these things, so that you're not pulled away by every thought of enjoyment that comes up in the mind, so that you're not pulled up into every fantasy that passes through the imagination, right? But that you see that fantasy coming before it's been developed because you're in there aware, right? And so you see the makings of a fantasy. You feel the thing on the arm that normally wakes you up to discontent for, for a girlfriend, let's say. You feel something rub your arm and then you feel it go and grab the memory of the time that Kim rubbed your arm like that in high school. It's like, and you become familiar so that you see these things happening and you're not subject to them. You're not a victim to them. You're like, oh, that's how that one starts. No, no. Sit down over there, guys. No, we're not doing that today. Not going to happen, right? Because you caught it. You caught that first sensation and you knew that it was going to go grab the memory of Kim, but you stepped in between. You said, nope, we're not going there today. You're not going to go grab that memory, sit back down, chill out. And at that point, it's not mature enough to fight you. It hasn't become a state of mind yet. It hasn't become an attachment yet. Once it becomes an attachment, there's no fighting it really. Once it becomes an attachment, it becomes time for a stern renunciation. If you don't have that stern renunciation, you're just going to lose, right? You'll argue long enough to feel good about losing. And then you'll lose and be like, oh, I'm such a victim. Mother, come save me, right? All these little plays of the mind. So we have to become aware of them so we don't become victims of them, of it. Right? So he says here, it is just like liquid milk is kept in the water of the world, then the milk and water will get mixed. In that case, it will be impossible for the mind to float unattached in the world. Live in the world, but in order to realize God, hold fast to his lotus feet with one hand, and with the other do your duties. Right? And what does that mean? What does that mean? He said drawing to that illustration of the woman who's working in the mill, right? But really, what this means is we often talk about the selfie stick we all carry around inside, right? And the end that's inside of us is the self, right? And he's holding that selfie stick and looking through the senses. All the senses are on the other end of the selfie stick. right? And so it's looking through the lens on the other end of that selfie stick, and all of your attention is at the far end of the selfie stick, right? The way that we get 1/16 of our mind on God is by being aware of the end that the self is holding, and not the end with all the senses on it out there, all of the measurements and camera and microphone and all the changing stuff, right? What we want to do is always make sure that some of our mind is on the still end of the stick. I'm the one holding all of my senses and determining what they look at, what my mind thinks about, what my body experiences. That's me. I get to I get to be aware of all that. And you make sure that your awareness stays 1/16 on this end, and then anything else can happen on the other end. You won't get pulled into it. If you can remember, I'm the self watching all of this, right? Observing all of this happening. And then you can slowly learn from it and use that education to free yourself
So,
from.
Maharaj, what if you can't remember?
Then keep trying. Keep trying. You cannot lose.
Pretty exhausted. So when you really hit the rock bottom and you feel like you're really tired with holding on, I think that's a good moment to kind of like realize, okay, I really need to let it go. So sometimes we need this moment of this like, what am I doing and why? And that was my experience. And it was like, just let it go. Stop holding, like in that joke, like, why are you holding the cactus? You're screaming because of pain. Like, let go the cactus, for God's sakes.
Yeah, no, you're right. And Thakur sort of gives us a little hint about that. He says, we basically get two choices in our devotion. We can either be the cat, where we're depending on mother to carry us everywhere and place us where we need ourselves to be at all given times, or we can be the monkey, where the monkey's job is the baby is responsible for holding on to the mother, right, and not letting go of the mother. And so if you're getting tired of holding on to the mother, that's becoming a bit wearisome, well, then be a kitty for a while and just assume where you are is best. But see, the one thing that needs to remain is the thought of God in the middle. Whether it's God holding you or you holding God, or whether it's you being the doer or you not being the doer, whatever it is, what's important is always that God is the frame, is the container of whatever is. Right? And it's through that holding that one space within us that that we don't get lost. We don't lose our pole star. Right? The subjudge joyously. Sir, these are very beautiful words indeed. Right? Of course, one must practice spiritual discipline in solitude, but we forget all about it. We think we have become King Janaka outright. The master and the devotees laugh. I feel very happy and peaceful even to hear that there is no need to give up the world and that God can be realized from home as well. Master, why should you give up the world? Since you must fight, it is wise for you to fight from a fort. You must fight against your sense organs, fight against your hunger and thirst. Therefore, you will be wise in the face of the battle from the world. Further, in the Kali Yuga, the life of a man depends on his food. If one day you have nothing to eat, then you will forget all about God. A man once said to his wife, I'm going to leave the world. She was a sensible woman, and she said, why would you wander about? If you don't have to knock on 10 doors uh, for your stomach's sake, well, go. But if that is the case, then it's better to live in this place, right? So she's saying, yeah, if you go out there and live like a monk, go renounce, sure, that's a great thing to do, but then you have to knock on 10 doors for a meal. If you stay here as a householder, I'll give you your meal, right? And it's true. And Ramakrishna is saying that. He says, use your home, use your family, use your friends, use them all as your fort for realizing God, right? Like the way Prabhupada talked about spiritual life for the householder. He says, for the householder, it's a matter of expansion, right? You have a life by yourself, and in that life by yourself, you are the brahmachari. You're doing your studying, you're doing your meditations, you're doing your practice, you're learning to control yourself, you're learning to be empathetic and to be compassionate and to be a human being. And then when the time comes, mother gives you a partner. Well, now you have to break into two people. You have to expand yourself to two wills, and you have to compromise to accommodate two wills, right? And you have to accommodate the other desires. And so you're going to have to compromise, let go of some of your preferences, let go of some of your desires, and give yourself to the desires of someone else, right? And so in that way, the ego gets thinned, the sense of self expands, and then you have some kids, and suddenly you have to give up a little bit of sleep, or maybe all of your sleep, right? And then you have to change diapers without throwing up, and all these other things. I'm an expert on these things. I've seen them all on YouTube, so I know all about it. And so this is the way that mother expands the householder mind, because now you have to take the kids' ideas and desires and wants and dislikes into account. And you have to temper your decisions about what life is going to be or where it's going to go or what you're going to do based on the will of the rest of the folks in your family that you're responsible for. No longer just the single person running around doing whatever they like. And so householder is a path. And it's controlled by God. Every step of it is controlled by God, right? To bring you to your realization. And if you can live your householder life with the understanding that God has designed it to bring you to realization, then you can be watching the things that happen and learn the lessons that they induce in you. And you can use your discernment to quicken the process, right? And so this is how it happens, but it's all very much done in the realm of awareness, alertness, a constant abiding uh, observation of what's happening, of what's going on. And then you come to your truth. You come to the realization, wow, it becomes obvious to you then as well. But what he's warning everybody about is don't say, oh, I'm going to be like King Jonica, and then just live a householder's life where you're just cooking to make your best food and you're hanging out with your wife because you enjoy her company, but none of it is being used in a way to expand, to break down egoism, to break down small-mindedness, right? Don't just get up and get lost in your householder life one day after another without any change and no consideration of change for yourself. Get up and pay attention. What's working for you and what's not. And the things that aren't working, get rid of them. And the things that are working, do more of them. Right? And go forward in that way.
Swamiji, you just said that in Kali Yuga people need food. So what happens in other yugas like Satya Yuga or Dvapara Yuga?
Yeah, well, at those times you have a surge in rishis. Right now it's very hard for us because, well, as we see, everything is costing so much now. Everything has been calculated out, until the revolution is over anyway. Things have been calculated out to run you dry, right? And so who's going to have time to run off and spend time in solitude? Who's going to be able to take off from the office in the afternoon? But there is a time, and you can still see it sometimes in India, where life is much more leisurely like that. It's not all about working, and it's not all about paying bills, and it's not all about this. That there's some space in there for some wiggle room. And in the old days, when the rishis ran off to the mountains, and vowed not to come down until they knew the meaning of life. Well, they were able to do that. There was some place for them to go. There was somewhere where they were allowed to live, some roots that they were allowed to harvest and all of that. And so they went and did their thing, and people supported them, right? And
But
so,
was there physical food? Or because some saints, even in our day and age, don't consume food or very little of it. Or so I was wondering in previous yugas, like Satya Yuga, what level of physicality was there? If
well,
there,
it would have been there, but there would have been, there's always been plenty of food in in the world for everybody to have some. But first, in the Satya Yuga, it gets to the people who need it. In the Kali Yuga, the rich are hoarding it, and so it doesn't get distributed well. So nothing really changes. It's just that right now the emphasis in the world is business and consumerism. And so in that environment where capitalism is king, it's very hard to find time for nonsensical things like spiritual life, right? Things that don't pay bills, things that don't make money, things that don't have a directly obvious uh, advantage to them, right? And so it becomes harder to do. In Satya Yuga, where more people are spiritually minded, people are willing to say, hey, why don't you come stay in my garden shed for the week? I'll bring food out to you. That's a Satya Yuga day. When people are generous and people will help you, and you don't have to get everything done and pay for everything on your own. The society helps. You look at
and
it.
so I'm sorry, go on.
No, please. What were you going to say?
I just wanted to see if so it's like every yuga has its own timing, right? And Kali Yuga is like the longest, I think. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that because we're talking millions of years when we talk about yugas. So we don't
So it's
really.
like serving time. At one point, the wheels of the universe will change, and we're going to come out of, well, humanity will come out of the Kali Yuga and things. It's sort
Yeah.
of like cosmic clock.
Yes, as such, I don't pay much attention to these things at all, mostly because my moment is my moment, regardless of what it's framed by. So this moment can do what it does, no matter what yuga it is. It's just a matter of some yugas, it's easier to think of God than in other yugas. But my knowing that is no advantage to me. I'm still in this yuga and will be for the next million years. And so whatever it is what I have to learn to deal with. So that information is not super valuable except to just kind of help you frame the universe if that's helpful to you,
Mm.
the way that it's put together.
Well, you just mentioned Kali Yuga, and I was wondering if
Yeah, well, Holy Mother said that Ramakrishna's advent uh, brings the advent of the Satya Yuga, that we're moving into the Satya Yuga,
oh.
the age of peace. And but she also says that at the beginning of it, there's often lots of turmoil. At the change of a yuga, there's lots of turmoil. So I like to think that's what we're going through. That we're going to end up in the age of peace, right? The age of Satya, truth, peace. All right. Let's read one more here. So the sub-judge is very, very excited. Beautiful words. And he says something here that I like very much. He says, of course, one must practice spiritual discipline in solitude, but we forget all about it, right? He says, I feel very happy and peaceful even to hear that there is no need to give up the world, right? And there's a lesson in that that's very important for how to make peace with your mind, right? It's like when you think about spiritual practices, the mind will have a reaction to them. And a lot of times we will form our opinions about those spiritual practices based about how our mind feels about them when we think about them. And if we do that, we can get shut down, right? Because if you tell the mind you never get to have a piece of sugar candy again for your whole life, well, the mind's like, wow, whole life, that's a long time. I'm never going to get another piece of sugar candy. And of course, it's going to lock up, right? And it's not going to want to fight that battle. It's not going to want to fight to not have sugar candy. It's going to want to sneak one. It's going to start looking for hiding places to stash sugar candy, right? So don't ever present your mind with the option to renounce something completely forever. The mind will freak out. So what do? You just say, no, don't have a sugar candy right now. That's all. That's as much renunciation as saying I'm never going to have one the rest of my life, but it won't cause the panic attack. You say, no, not right now. And if you just stay pure in the moment, you'll be pure when you die. Right? And so it's a trick of spiritual life. Don't do things in big pieces, and don't look at the changes of your life that are necessary to be big changes. Oh, I need to meditate 4 hours a day, 3 times a day, every day from now until Christmas. No way. You're not going to do any of it. You're going to feel horribly guilty the first time you fail. And that guilt is going to become the samskara that prevents you from trying again tomorrow. And then that's going to be the impetus for you fulfilling desires so that you can stay distracted to stop noticing that you're not meditating anymore, right? That's how that works. So you have to become a parent to your mind, and you have to learn about your toddler mind. What triggers it? What causes it trouble? Are there less shocking ways that I can control it rather than just coming in and expecting to control it? That's why Mother says, make the mind your friend. You know, instead of just coming and grabbing the scissors out of the toddler's hands and yelling at it, come in with a red ball and ask it if it will trade the scissors for the red ball, right? And then everybody's happy. Nobody's traumatized. You don't have to rip the scissors out of the fingers of the mind. You just give it a red ball, it gives you the scissors, and you keep going, right? And so this is the way. This is the way, and this is what we're doing when we go inside, diving deep. We're learning about the mind. We're befriending ourselves. We're learning that I, the self, am the guru of my body and mind. And that is where my awareness lies. And I'm a friend. I'm not resisting the sin in my body mind. I'm not promoting it. I'm not asking the question. I'm simply putting my mind on God and going forward. All of the plans and the effects and the schemes and the all of that's Mother's. It's not my responsibility to fix me. That's Mother's responsibility to fix me. It's my responsibility to be available. Right? And you do that one moment at a time, one smidgen at a time, one small piece at a time. Nobody has to get worked up. Nobody has to get freaked out. Nobody has to get terrified. One small piece in one small moment at a time. All right. Let me turn off the recorder here.